This is a Commission on Equitable Housing and Development meeting has now been commenced. It is March 2nd at 4:04 p.m. This meeting will be held virtually due to COVID-19 to allow for social distancing and protect the public health. As we continue our efforts in meeting remotely, we ask all commissioners and guests to mute yourselves until called upon to speak, to avoid feedback and background noise. For those who have dialed in using the call-in number, to unmute and speak, dial *6 on your phone. Also, prior to speaking, please announce who you are to identify yourself. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. We ask that you only use the chat function to request to speak or to announce that you are leaving the meeting so that we can track quorum. Also, in order to comply with the state open meeting law, attendance and votes will be done by way of roll call using audio, not by using the chat function. And I'm not sure if you're on or not, but there's other people joining the meeting through Microsoft Teams. So
Yep.
you could keep an eye on.
Yep, I'm on, and I asked a staff member to go over there and kick him over here.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so we're going to do roll call. Michael Edmonds.
Present.
Olga Flores.
Sorry, present.
Okay. Sharia.
Present.
Monica Lane.
Present.
Okay, Jim Toffel is present. Liz Wilshin.
I'm here.
Jay Young.
Here.
Mindy Bernstein.
Present.
Lori Mazurbo.
Present.
Great. I think that's all of our voting members. 100% attendance. Good job, everybody. Okay, our ex officio members, Maggie Amato Tejas.
Present.
Wendy Asher.
Present.
Marianne Bierling.
Present.
Mark Clark.
Present.
Vicky Casino. Did I pronounce that correctly?
You did. Here.
Okay, hi Vicky.
Hi.
Dan Sullivan.
Present.
Veronica Morena. Corin Manning.
Present.
And Liz Morales.
I'm here.
Wow, what an amazing turnout. Good job, everyone. So I'm actually very glad that we've got such a good turnout today, because I think today is an important meeting. We're going to start by approving the meeting minutes. We'll do the call to audience. We'd like to discuss restating the commission's mission to help make it a little bit more clear and focused on what we're going to do. And then we're going to jump into basically a working session to establish goals, both short-term goals and long-term goals. So our goal is to finish the meeting today by 6 o'clock. And so let's get into it. So first of all, the meeting minutes are on our website. And so I'd like to open it up. Does anybody have any questions or changes from our April meeting minutes? I actually have one question. There was a motion by Liz to add a voting member to the commission. Did that go to mayor and council, and was that ever addressed by mayor and council?
It will go to mayor and council after this adoption. So they have not seen it yet formally, but they will after this gets completed.
Okay.
Will it be at the next meeting?
I don't know that. There's a couple council staff here, but we'll work to see. It'll definitely go as soon as we can get it there.
Okay, any other questions or comments on the meeting minutes? Okay, hearing none, without objection, then the meeting minutes are approved. So now is the
Mindy,
call
it
to
looks like-
audience. Excuse me?
It looks like Mindy had a question.
I was going to motion to accept the minutes, but apparently don't need a second on that. So we're good. No question.
Okay, do you want me to put it to vote?
No. Keep it simple.
Okay, yeah, so I sometimes will do that to try to move meetings along. When I say without objection, it's an implied approval. If somebody wants to put it to vote, all you have to do is say object, and then we'll go through the process of voting on it. So without objection, we'll approve those meeting minutes. Okay, so we'll move on to the call to agenda item number 3, to call to the audience. This is a time when any member of the public may address the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development. Due to time constraints, the total time allocated for this is 15 minutes. Individuals are allowed 3 minutes each. Due to open meeting laws, Commission members cannot discuss topics that are not on the agenda. Items brought up by the public may be considered as an agenda item for future meetings. So do we have anyone who would like to speak?
I'd like to introduce Janelle to everyone. Janelle, I'm sorry for outing you. She's somebody who I have invited to sit in and listen to the commission. She's a developer and has well, Janelle, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you. Mindy and I have been having a lot of conversations. I'm a developer, but also have a planning degree, and I also do design work. And I'm just interested in low-income housing that's inspirational. I don't know if that's even possible, but thank you for letting me join.
You're welcome. Do we have anyone else who would like to speak? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to agenda item number 4, which is to restate the commission's mission. So the current mission for the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development is as follows. First, focus on increasing the city's investment in housing. Second, preserve the affordability while increasing housing production and stock. Third, protect our barrios and communities from rapid change and displacement, as well as structural disinvestment. Fourth, facilitate equitable conversations and solutions that incorporate voices in a collaborative environment. And fifth, provide measurable and well-defined goals to address the housing shortfalls. So what we would like to propose to mayor and council is to clean these up a little bit and make them, I guess, just a little bit more clear and concise and succinct. And so what we've proposed is the following. Does everybody have the agenda and can read this along with me? Okay. So what we'd like to propose changing them to is first, to generate and preserve affordability for Tucsonans. 2, to protect the barrios and communities from rapid change and displacement, as well as structural disinvestment. And 3, promote social responsibility from developers and landlords. So I would like to open this up to discussion.
And I can share my screen at any time with that information if it's helpful for people to see it.
Yeah, could you please?
Oh,
I would just like to bring up that there's no mention of people living without housing, people on the street, people living in homelessness anywhere in this. And I think that that should be specifically addressed. Like, how can we be a commission on equitable housing without specifically addressing that, in my opinion?
I second that.
Okay.
This is Monica here. To sort of address that point, I think to me, generate and preserve affordability for Tucsonans is a little vague. So maybe fixing that would say something like housing affordability and accessibility, or I'm sort of at a loss for words here, but I feel like in that first statement, you could address both affordable housing and access to housing, period, full stop. So I'd kick it back to you, Liz, to a certain extent for what you think the appropriate phrase in there would be, but that would make sense to me.
So I think that that is not adequate for addressing homelessness, first of all, because I think that homelessness is on the street. And it is people who don't have homes. So yeah, I think that access to homes is one part of homelessness, but also people are on the street. They need services on the street before they get into homes. So I think that, yeah, that's one prong of protecting people who are in homes. But I think also there needs to be a fourth point that addresses homelessness. And I see that Mindy has something to say.
I do. Is there a way to print this out and not, was that in the agenda?
It is on the agenda, I believe.
It didn't
Isn't
print.
it? Hmm.
I
No,
can send it.
I don't do so well looking at computers and reading things. I need it in hand, like paper, but I also strongly agree that there is nothing in here about homelessness. And from the data that we heard last month, I calculated it quickly in my head that there are approximately, of people whom are homeless, over 45% are individuals with substance use disorders, mental illness, or veterans. And I feel that focusing on the homelessness issue needs to be a very active part of our discussion.
I would propose, Jim, that we just add a bullet number 4 that says, and work towards ending homelessness.
Okay, I'm good with that.
I second that.
And on the first one, generate and we can change the word from generate to develop and preserve affordable housing for Tucsonians that is accessible for all, that is accessible to all communities, or something to that effect.
I think that first, I haven't figured out how to raise my hand yet, so just tell me to shut up when I'm cutting people off. Mindy, I actually see you have your hand up. You can go ahead and speak before me.
I think she didn't lower it.
Oh, okay. I still think, I'd like to have a little further discussion from, again, both Liz and Mindy particularly. For me, work towards ending homelessness is really vague. it doesn't say that we're trying to do anything. If there's something very specific that maybe we want to work towards addressing. Mindy, you said sorry, not Mindy, Liz, you said something very interesting that I hadn't thought about and I missed a little bit. And it was something about the homeless population needs what on the street? What is can you go back to that point you were trying to make?
I think that was. me.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, yes.
people living in homelessness need toilets. They need addresses to register for them to not get second offenses when they're discharged from incarceration. They need, ordinances to not be enforced. I mean, like, it is criminalized for people to live in homelessness.
I would propose, though, that we need to keep the mission broad and our goals. We'll get into the strategies and the outcomes, the measurements we want. That would be my 2 cents.
Yeah, but I still think we can be a little more specific than that. Something like supporting I'm sorry, forgive me, I'm thinking off the top of my head, but supporting the homeless population or advocating for the homeless population such that they can move towards being housed or not being homeless or away from homelessness, something around that way. Because I think what Liz is proposing is there's some advocacy that we could be doing on, the least that we could be doing would be advocacy on behalf of homelessness, the homeless population. But I don't know the exact words.
So we've got 4 people who want to speak. It's going to be Lori, then Mike, then Mary Ann, and then Sharia. So Lori, you're on deck.
I think we need to put something in here about DEI. I don't see that anywhere, and it feels like that's pretty important.
What is DEI?
I'm sorry, diversion, equity, and inclusion.
I do think that was supposed to be captured in number 3. So if you want to reword number 3, that's what that was directed towards.
Yeah.
I think we also get there. Sorry, just this is Poonam Mathur, by the way. I'm your facilitator for the next section. This is Rich. Discussion. Somewhere the word equity would explicitly, I think, address what Lori's, and I do observe that we don't have the word equity in there. The other thing I just want to surface for all of you is that the numbers are all meant to further that first paragraph, which is really the bullseye of the mission. So what this declares is that the reason that you exist is to make specific recommendations to the Mayor and Council based on a process anchored by research, data, and public input to increase the number of housing units that will, and then the 4 follow, or the 3 follow, the points follow. So really the explicit thing I just want to lift up is that what this declares is that we exist to come up with great ideas to increase the number of units. And as we're doing that, here are the sort of design principles we will adhere to. 1, whatever we do is going to increase advance, accessibility. I would suggest maybe equity goes here, and affordability for everybody. We're going to honor what we have and not jump all over the history, which is sort of explained in number 2. We're going to make sure that there's social responsibility being demonstrated by everybody. And then the homelessness is, it does feel a bit outside, although it is also a question of, does it belong here? Is it one of the specific goals which is the next activity that we would go into, right? So if our macro mission, the reason we exist is to advance specific recommendations to increase number of housing units, then in the goals we could say, and as we do that, one of our key areas of emphasis will be to increase housing units that are then going to be for the homeless, which to me does feel like a secondary objective, right? Rather than central to the mission. Because if you start to do that, explicit, specific stakeholder groups, seniors, working families, profoundly impacted negatively by COVID, it doesn't. So that may be best addressed in the next, which is the discussion about specific goals. That's it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Poonam. Okay, Lori, are you good?
Sure.
Okay. Mike, you're next.
Okay, I don't want to throw us off track, Jim, but let me just say a couple things real quick. In the ordinance that created this commission, I'm going to paraphrase what's in the middle of it here. In performing its mission as described above, the CEHD shall focus on carrying out the following functions. Function 3 is identify new capital resources and make them available for affordable housing and homelessness programs. Now, having said that, and this, again, I don't mean to throw us off track, but Jim, I don't remember us agreeing upon the definition of homelessness. And the only reason I'm concerned about that is because we're talking about homelessness, and Ann and Liz might want to jump in here because it can be defined differently depending on which organization or agency we're dealing with. People in the street logically would be homeless, but there are people who are defined as homeless who are couch surfing.
I want to encourage you to come up to altitude, right? This is the answer to the question, why do we as a commission exist? Right? And so that's really in this declaration, that's the mission, because that's sort of the rudder that's going to guide the work. As you articulate the specific things that you choose to work on, you can declare this is the one aspect of this broader mission. The broader mission is we're going to generate ideas that will increase the number of housing units in Tucson. Like that's sort of the centerpiece, right? And then you've got the power to say, and we think based on need, based on all myriad of considerations, that we think we're going to start with homeless on the street, move into something. That would be an option as a goal. I do think it's a goal. And so I would encourage altitude. This mission is really the why do we exist?
Okay.
And if it becomes too long, it becomes not so useful as a reminder why we exist because we don't remember it, right? So I know that's itchy. So I apologize for that. And there will be in the goals, that's where the specific declarations of the specific kinds of things that we want to accomplish under the umbrella of we're going to set this goal because it will increase the number of housing units. Ultimately, that's the reason we exist.
I think what Poonam is trying to say is when we're talking about a mission, and it should be more of a strategic, long-term type of a discussion. Very, very high level. The goals are going to be more tangible success criteria. These are the specific things that we're going to focus on for the next year or 3 years or whatever time frame to try to achieve the mission. So with that, go ahead.
Yeah, so but even if I look, I mean, I think I don't want to punify a priority on homelessness, to just be really clear about that. So for instance, supporting homeless populations such that they can move towards being housed is a hugely important goal for any community, right? And that's a how, not central. That's not the mission. That's one of the ways in which you might accomplish the mission. But that comes later. So if we put too much detail into the mission, it doesn't become as useful as a mission because it's too long for us to remember. And so if the reason that we exist, there are 8 voting, there are 9 or 10 ex officio, the 18 of us are tossed in this moment together, and here's how we will know 10, 15, 20 years from now that we were successful, is there will be a whole bunch of increase in number of units. And those increases may be in getting people off streets and into something that is secure for the first time. It may be, and whatever is entailed in that, it could be that. It could also be seniors. It could be, working folks. It could be all manner of ways in which you would have accomplished it. But the mission is what this suggests to you, the proposal here is that the answer to why we exist would be, we will make recommendations to increase the number of housing units. That's the bullseye of the proposed mission.
Okay. Marianne, you're on deck. Marianne, you there?
It looks like Marianne stepped away.
Okay, Liz, you're up.
I
didn't
kind of would like to
leave.
push it.
You guys, I didn't leave. I couldn't get the stupid mouse to unmute me. And maybe that's a sign, but when I raised my hand regarding the conversation focusing on increasing city investment in housing and this work toward ending homelessness, there is a middle class and a non-homeless paycheck to paycheck class of people that are not getting their needs met either. And they are falling closer and closer to homelessness. The funds for programs such as rapid rehousing and tax credits that develop housing in our cities are more and more being used to solve the problem of homelessness, which puts a lot of strain on the economic well-being of projects that cost a lot of money to develop. So as part of this conversation, I am recommending that it's not just the bricks and mortar and creating housing, but as part of that investment in increasing the number of units in Tucson, we are looking at advocacy on a political level from this session to talk to the feds and the state about transitional housing, permanent supportive housing, and coming up with funds to develop that type of housing for the population you're talking about, rather than using funding that was for that low and very low working class population. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Marianne. Liz, you're up.
So we have spent 4 meetings talking about exactly the people Marianne has brought up. And I would like for people living in homelessness to be mentioned specifically, because the people living in homelessness were among the most vulnerable when it came to exposure to COVID-19. They were not prioritized until very recently when it came to like COVID-19 vaccinations. They are among the most vulnerable when it comes to being the sickest. And I think that, and HUD funding is like specifically designated for people living in homelessness in a lot of very specific ways. So I think it's important that we specify people living in homelessness because they are very easy to be forgotten in our community. And housing resources should be specified. I'd also like to push against like the language of diversity and inclusion, and like really say equity rather than diversity and inclusion, because inclusion, like, is that included to who? Included to like people who hold power. Like equity is about, you know, access to things. Inclusion says like, we're including you into this like power group, right? Like equity is about setting standards where everyone is the standard. So I'd like to say just like, let's keep it at equity.
Okay.
And so to that end, and if you can bring that back up, the share screen. Let's see if this works. I had exactly the same thought. In number 1, where right now I think it says, so what this is, again, the mission that's proposed here is that the reason you exist is to make recommendations to increase the number of units that will, 1, how about develop and preserve affordable housing that is equitable and accessible for all Tucsonans. Is that, it doesn't sound so elegant, but Liz, does that capture it there? So what you're saying is one of our design principles is whatever we advance as a recommendation will accomplish.
I think including those who are not currently in housing might be a way to specify that.
Okay, because the other part of that, Liz, is then I think you make a good point, and the homeless absolutely would be incredibly vulnerable, arguably the most vulnerable, and so are those about to slip into it. And so there may be an argument that would get, a credible argument made there. There's going to be some that will say seniors are incredibly vulnerable. And so the question—
Seniors are also living on the street.
Right. But so the question really for the commission is, if you explicitly reference a segment, should you then, to be sort of fair, list out the key priority segments?
But I think that we are talking about housing status in this. And so I think, if we're talking about housing status in this, I think it's appropriate to talk about, the most vulnerable housing status.
So to your point, do we add it as a comma in number 1? Develop and preserve affordable housing is equitable and accessible for all Tucsonans. And then you offered something I thought was cool, comma, including
those without housing.
Those without housing. I think, does that feel explicit to you enough? Is that sufficiently explicit? Yeah. And to the rest of you, does that feel comfortable? And so you are explicitly, so as you advance recommendations to increase the number of units, these three—
It's just my concern.
Will be true.
It's just my concern that we're already on the 5th meeting and not once have we talked about people without housing.
And I am going to ask you to trust me. In the next segment, we're going to talk about specific goals that you want to set and go after and be excellent at accomplishing in the short term and the long term. And this is exactly the kind of thing you could say, we're going to go hard and fast, in an urgent sort of stance on this one, for this one issue. Like, that's a goal, right? But this is, again, the why we exist as a commission. So if 10 years from now, you look back and you have increased the number of units that accomplish those 3 sort of value propositions that are declared by you, will you be proud of the legacy that you will be leaving? That's the question, right?
I'm fine. Someone else can speak. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Monica.
I just wanted to say, one, Liz, I actually appreciate your pushing back on this, and I agree with you completely on that point. I do think it's important to talk about those without housing in the context of talking about housing. It seems silly to talk about the one without the other. So I'm comfortable with that statement. I don't know if Liz is, but I'm glad that that's been made explicit. And for me, we can talk about this at a different point, but it's a complete pivot from that. Maybe this is me just being a developer and taking umbrage at bullet point number 3, but I don't care for that language at all. And I would go somewhat back to facilitate conversations between developers, landlords. I know we always use the word stakeholders. I don't know what that is, but I love the idea of facilitating conversations. I'm happy to facilitate conversations between developers and this commission or anybody who wants to talk to a developer, but not all of us are socially irresponsible cretins. And I don't love that language. So
just to understand, I just want to understand what you said. So is the itch promote social responsibility has an underlying something that says because you don't have it now?
Well, that, and also specifically at us, everybody should be socially responsible, right? Like, everybody should be participating in these conversations.
Because the facilitation of conversations, I would observe, is a how. That's how we accomplish that, right? And so the question is, how do we term, I hear you completely. How can we modify that third one?
Why would you want to modify facilitate? I mean, I think that would be really easy for us to do as a commission, is to facilitate conversations. I'm sorry, say one more time.
Yeah, so I would observe that that's a how you will accomplish the whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. A facilitation of conversation is a process that gets you to what end. And
so I take your point, but I feel like all of these bullet points are how. How do we do this? We develop. How do we do this? We protect. How do we do this? We promote. Why can't we use facilitate in there as well?
Yeah, fair point. So what do the others think about that? So facilitate.
You can talk.
Ability itchy as well? Or is that?
No, it doesn't. I'm actually comfortable with saying something like socially responsible conversations or conversations about social responsibility.
So how about that? So let's say, say what you're saying. So the word is facilitate, but rather than promote, and it's facilitate instead of promote.
I guess conversations around or about, either way, social responsibility in housing, something like that. Liz, if you want to chime in with what those other words should be. And then I would say specifically between developers, landlords, and I don't know if you want to say stakeholders, if you want to say renters, I don't know the other words we want to use. Tenants. Sorry, thank you, Liz.
Okay,
but just so you know, I think one of the things that this is about, how to get developers and landlords to work with us around affordable housing. So so it's the idea is how do we involve them and again, social responsibility doesn't have to be the words, but it is around how do we get them to work with us and do some things that they would not normally do in their line of business.
To your point, Liz, equitability?
I mean, I think you could just take it out entirely, right? Because if somebody from the Housing Commission is coming to a developer and saying, hey, let's talk about these issues, does it speak for itself?
Well, I think that the promote social responsibility encompasses facilitating the conversations as a means to an end. If we want to encourage social responsibility with the developers and the landlords, the tenants, I'm not sure I understand exactly what that means, and other stakeholders.
Do we need equitability and like accountability?
Well, I mean, the concern here is if you look at owners of properties, the slumlords have a higher profit rating than for A-class projects, A-class properties. That's a well-known fact that we've talked about that. So, I think this, what this is leaning towards is, we don't want the owners of these properties and the landlords to be taking advantage of our most vulnerable population. And I think that's the social responsibility aspect.
Can I jump in, because I can see everyone on this? Jay Young is wanting to speak and he hasn't spoken.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm wanting to push back on this thing about developers as well. You don't ask developers to be socially equitable or whatever. You create policies and laws that force them to do that. If they were going to do it, they would do it already. So the idea that we're going to invite people to come and be like, hey, do this thing that you're not doing already, I think is a little Pollyanna-ish in my opinion. So I would push back on that. And yeah, I don't know what should go in its place necessarily.
Jay, I was going to say, I think at this point, we really should provide some different language so that instead of saying we don't like those words, and I agree with you on the developer side, it's less about, asking them, but it's about how do we get them to work with us. But I think we're at a point we need to suggest language. And I do know that the second part of this meeting is going to create even more conversation around this. Can I ask Jim if you'd be willing for us to, after the conversation that we're going to have on the second part, to revisit the mission, because I think that might help as well. And I think working on.
Monica, can you put yourself on mute, please? Monica?
Oh yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, I think this has been good conversation. I think it gives us all a chance to maybe submit some alternate language for these and then look at what other people have submitted and look at some of those options. Because I think it's really hard on here for us to get everyone's input. So if we give everyone kind of an assignment on the mission and to provide some additional language, maybe we can take what we see from everyone and it'll give people a chance like Mindy to look at it on paper and write it out a few different times.
As you're doing that, I think
I'm fine with that. I'm going to I'm going to give Mindy and Shreya a chance to speak as well. So Mindy, you've got the floor.
I wanted to share with Monica and Liz that I also have a strong urgency regarding homelessness and the demographic of citizens that are couch surfing, homeless, vulnerable, that we tolerate that as a community. It's a federal funding issue. Also, so there was two things I wanted to add as part of the conversation. One is taking a look at our HUD and Section 8 housing programs that are predominantly all in impoverished neighborhoods where are vulnerable people who are coming out of hospitals and recovery programs. There are so much drug use in the apartment complexes and neighborhoods that are Section 8. Housing is an issue. The other piece in some of our wording is to include innovative or best practices and to keep our minds on what is working other places or what can we possibly create that's new that other people are not doing, but maintaining a mindfulness of our most vulnerable people who are about to lose housing and the people who don't have housing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Shreya?
Yeah, I was just gonna say with that third point, I also think it needs work. I see the issue not wanting to single out a specific group. You know, maybe it could be something more like just irresponsible. I don't know. Folks, because there are good developers out there. There are good landlords out there. You know, and we don't want to badmouth them, but they already have a bad reputation. I mean, you say the development and developers, and it's like a dirty word in the community. So that's because there's just so much negative, there's just been so much of it that's been bad. And so, and slumlords is a huge problem that, oh my gosh, it just gets on my nerves so badly. And I think we need teeth. I think we need policy. And so for me, when I go back to the high level, there's a few things that I think maybe could be in the mission is the policy work that we have to do. The second is the funding and then the, regulatory barriers, whether that's the zoning or, and maybe with regulatory barriers that also encompasses, whatever teeth need to go in for developers and landlords. But there's really the policy work that we have to do, and then also the funding. To me, it's kind of just very two broad categories that somehow maybe need to be folded into this our mission statement.
Okay, so I agree with Liz's recommendation that this does need some more work, and I'd like to address it. The biggest goal that we've got for today is to establish specific goals. How are we going to define success a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now? And so what we'd like to do is establish SMART goals. And SMART is an acronym. It stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. And to help us through this, we're gonna establish short-term goals on things that we can accomplish in the next 12 months, and then long-term goals, which are the 2-year to 5-year time frame. And I will consider this a success if we can agree upon 1 to 3 short-term goals and 1 to 3 long-term goals. So to help us through this, Poonam Mathur is going to help moderate. And she's chimed in a little bit. So just as a quick bio introduction, Poonam has a 25-year career as a senior executive in the gaming industry in Las Vegas. She's a consultant working primarily with the municipal, county, and state governments. She describes herself as almost Tucsonan, having facilitated a series of virtual town hall meetings for the city this year. Within a lengthy list of volunteer and service roles, Mathur has received appointments to statewide leadership positions by the last 4 governors in our home state of Nevada. So, Poonam, we're glad to have you with us, and
thank you. And so
Andy,
I've changed it from an almost Tucsonan to a fangirl. That is now my new moniker and my relationship to all of you. It's an extraordinary community with extraordinary people, huge reservoirs of positive intention, and you're bold and courageous enough to face and deal with the hard stuff. And so that gives me so much hope for what you've got. So here's the bottom line. That conversation, so rich, so important, was meant to take like 15 minutes. And I had the balance of the agenda. So either we're going to order virtual pizza for dinner, I think not, or we're going to set a Ripley's Believe It or Not or a Guinness World Book of Record. Ready? Because we're about to do something that I've done many times, but never virtually. So let's see how it goes. What I know is when we're going where we've never gone, and it's big and hairy and important work, I just want to hold hands because it's safer. So in a virtual setting, I just want us to hold hands, it's safer. So here's the thing. The reason I'm with you today is that you've had 3 meetings as a commission. There is absolutely no shortage of positive intention, period. So asset check. What Jim observed was that the meetings had been incredibly valuable. He observed how grateful he was to learn about all that was happening, the number of projects, the whole getting up to speed on all of the fronts of activity and success around the city of Tucson. And what he was looking for still was something that felt more like tangible declaration. And Liz and Ann had also observed this same thing. They said, it's a great group, we're working, but there's an ocean of stuff to deal with, and we don't know how to boil the ocean. So here's what happens. When you're dealing with audaciously complex issues, guess what? Housing accessibility and equity and affordability in any community in the country is a ridiculously complex issue, right? So the challenge is, if we aren't somehow approaching in a way that we can be successful, we're going to swim around the ocean. And we will do what we've always done as communities and as a nation, which is not make significant progress, not transform into new possibilities. We'll just keep dealing with it the same way we always have. So here's what we're going to attempt to do in 1 hour and 8 minutes. I say good luck to us. We can do this. Here's the goal. Let me just find my paper. If I said I'm going to Arizona, that would be useful because it means that I'm not going to Nairobi. But by itself, it doesn't get me anywhere. I got a general direction, I'm headed in that direction. I think right now that's where you are. You are the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development. Another way to put it is we're going to Arizona. It's a big place, Arizona. So we could get more specific and say, we're going to go to Tucson. That's helpful. For you, it may be to say, the equivalent may be to say, we are the commission, we're going to Arizona, we're going to focus on homeless. Could be that, right? That by itself is it's better than saying we're going to Nairobi. Tucson is more specific than Arizona, but until you get a specific destination, a physical address, it is really difficult to be hyper efficient in backward mapping the entire journey. And the chance that you'll be wildly successful is a little bit of serendipity rather than strategy. Fair? So the goal here in the next hour or so is to do 2 things. One is to offer every idea, the good ones, the bad ones, and all ideas in between, in response to the following question. What if we as a commission could pursue something specific in the next 12 months or in the next 3 to 5 years? I want you to be less concerned with the time horizons. I think that's going to take more time, pun intended, I guess. Think about the goals. What can we do in the short term? What can we do in the longer term that will create some meaningful benefits? Or put it another way, what are the few things that if we delivered with excellence would increase the number of housing units in the city of Tucson? Right, so going back to the mission, the first part of the mission said, we exist to make recommendations to the mayor and council through a process that is listening and research-based and facilitative in order to increase the number of housing units. Then we've got the points that we're going to generate when we finalize the mission. So that's what we're trying to accomplish. The question is, what are the several things that we can do with excellence that would advance that mission, that would increase the number of housing units. Fair?
So,
No, it's going to be itchy because it's going to feel loose, and the gravitational pull, here's how sort of human nature works. We have a gravitational, there's an allure about the detail. What about? Here's how I can do it. Here's how I can do it. The how I get there, the left or the right, or the take this freeway, is less important at the beginning of the journey than the address in the city of Tucson that we're going to get to. And so the ideas that I'm looking for are the equivalent to the specific addresses, the what will we have accomplished with excellence. And those are the 5, that's the acronym SMART. Specific, it needs to be a physical address. Because if I just say I'm going to Tucson or just say I'm going to Arizona, that's not specific enough. I need the address, right? Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. So those are the 5 filters that tell you that it's the equivalent of a destination. So the idea is that we just want to dump as many ideas, not dump, share as many ideas. I don't want you to be concerned with whether it's the best idea. I don't want you to feel like you got to promote your idea or get others to like your idea. It's just about sharing the idea. Let's get them all up. That's the first part of how we're going to spend the time. The second part is that you will decide through a little survey process that Anne's going to sort of facilitate for us. You will decide which are the good ideas, the best ideas, the ones that you collectively want to pursue with vigor and passion and deliver with excellence. And so the idea here is that if we can emerge by 6 o'clock or somewhere around 6 o'clock with, as Jim said, 1, 2, or 3 SMART goals, the declarations of the things that we will be excellent at in the next 12 months, another couple of things that we can be excellent at in the next 3 to 5 years. What that gives you is the ability to have some specific addresses that you can then backward map your own work as a commission. Because now you've got a sense of what it's going to take. What do you need to be willing to do? How much advocacy? What's the funding? All of the details. Absent the destination, all of the details will simply be overwhelming because they're no end, right? And so that we can focus, it gives the how a way to focus to actually move and have some impact. Does that make sense? I'm going to give you one analogy that sometimes is helpful. Picture a boat. At the bottom of the boat, there's a keel. Think about a kayak or a canoe. It's a nubby little keel on the bottom of that boat. And here's the result. If I have a keel that is short in the water, any amount of turbulence on the surface is going to capsize me. In contrast, think about a ship that's got a deep keel in the water. When that keel is deep in the water, no amount of turbulence or complexity or details on the surface is going to capsize that boat. When it comes to solving something as audacious and as absolutely essential as housing for our brothers and sisters in our community, I want you to have the deepest keel you can. Because the complexity is going to find you. All of the reasons that it can't happen will surface. And the only way you're going to be able to navigate through all of that complexity is by having a keel that goes deep in the water. The goal here is to articulate those things that represent the keel in your water, right? Something's got to be simple. Don't worry about the complexity. It will find us, especially in monster complex social issues. It will find you. Don't worry about the complexity. It will find you. The leadership challenge always is to find and maintain the impeccability of the simplicity. So that's what we're going to challenge ourselves. That's what, when talking to Jim and Mike, they said, yep, let's give it a shot. Let's see. Because after 3 meetings, I think the consensus, I'm hearing it too, is we've had a lot of conversation, not sure where we're going, right? And so today we're going to challenge ourselves to answer the question, where are we going? So the question again, what are the things that if we did with excellence would advance us in achieving the mission? And for the time being, just take the first part of the mission. Your job is to make recommendations to increase the number of units. And so let's toss them up, and the filters we're going to run them through, SMART. And they are on your agenda, those 5 words, right? So and offer any idea. So let's hear them. And Anne's going to capture them all so that we can all see the genius of all of you in real time.
Poonam, do you want me to recognize individuals, or do you want to do it?
Let's do it. We've got hands up. Sure, your hand is still up. Is that still up or newly up?
Sorry, it's old.
Okay, Olga, your hand is up. Is that new one or?
It's a new one.
Great.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, yes.
So again, I know this isn't number one on the list, but I feel that everything in housing coincides with each other. So we're talking about homelessness, but if we don't create more opportunities of wealth for people, we're going to end up with more people homeless and outsiders owning all of our homes and renting to us.
So let me play that back.
So,
Yeah, so the suggestion is that we would put on something as a potential goal.
yes.
Again, we
So
want
my
all to get this.
suggestion is,
Okay.
yes,
Yep.
I would like to see affordable developments come up again. I used to work for Chicanos por la Causa in late 2000, late 99, 2000s, and they had La Causa Construction. That's an affordable builder. So I would like to see some projects go up that are only for affordable housing, whether it be for our people to purchase investor homes, to rent to people and make it affordable, or for people to purchase these homes to live in. I just feel that's one aspect that we need to cover.
That's awesome. So I want to make sure that I play it back to make sure we've heard it. And then Anne's going to document it. So the suggestion is, in response to the question, what are the things that we can do with excellence? If we do this with excellence in the next, what period of time do you see? Is that a 1 year or a longer term?
I would say a couple years, probably. It's going to have to
That's going to be our longer
year and a
term.
half or so,
Okay.
if
And
possible.
what you're saying is that this commission, one of the things that we can deliver with excellence is let's go and actually develop something.
Yes.
Okay. And what I just heard you say is that this would be for, when you say affordable housing, which segment are you're talking about? Workers?
All sectors. For
All
people that in a certain category can purchase this home either as an investment to rent out,
okay,
or to purchase to live in.
Okay, so the suggestion is put it on there. And you got that?
I heard a few different things, so I could use a recap
Play it
there.
back. Play it back.
Can I take a crack at this?
Yes.
So I've had the benefit of thinking about this for a week. And so I have, I guess, two goals that I would like to see on the list. The first goal is a 5-year goal where I would like to see 1,000 new affordable dwelling units created within the city of Tucson over the next 5 years.
Okay. And that would be, Jim, for a specific segment of the population, or doesn't matter? We're going to figure out whatever works.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we can necessarily dictate one segment over another, but if we generate 1,000 new units in the next 5 years, that'll benefit everybody.
Okay, and that will hit the bullseye.
That would be a long-term goal. And as a short-term goal in the next year, as a means to an end to achieve the long-term goal, I would like to see the commission provide a set of recommendations to mayor and council and the city as a whole on what are things that the city can do to promote and garner interest from private developers to create new affordable housing. So a couple examples are the zoning codes. If the city were to relax some of the zoning codes for parking requirements, we could get more density on a specific site. If the city were to incentivize affordable housing by reducing impact fees, that would potentially create additional units. There are a lot of things that the city has the power to do. Some of them cost money, some of them do not cost money. But if we could highlight these are all the different things that we think the city can do to generate additional affordable housing units, that would be kind of a first step to maybe achieving that 5-year goal.
So if the group, if all of you said, yep, we want to deliver this one with excellence because we see that this is applying the Pareto principle, I think works. Generally speaking, 20% of our actions are going to yield 80% of our results. So the question always is, what are the 20% of the actions? Like what should I do to maximize the return? So what you're saying is that if within a year, this commission said, we're going to deliver a very specific set of recommendations to the mayor and council to say, here are all the existing tools, incentives, levers that you've already got through CBD, LIHTC, zoning codes, and here are the specific things that you can do in modifying those to increase some fuel in the the momentum for around affordable housing.
Yep.
Is that it? Okay. Ann, did you get that? Okay, awesome. That's it. So let's see. Sheree, did you, is that still the hand up or you had it from before? Again?
Yeah, I have my hand up again. Can we move? So we're just throwing out ideas right now, right? Anybody?
No, listen, with what you don't see in Ann's hand is a catcher's mitt, but she's going to catch all these, so you will see them all in a Word document when we're done. So keep going. Yes.
So one of my goals, I'm not sure if it's short term, it might be longer term, like maybe the next 2 years, would be a housing bond passed. We're out of money in general. And I think if we had a very specific bond fund that was just housing and it wasn't tied in with all these other issues, because the last one that went through got shot down because there was like too many other issues brought to the table at once. But I think if we could get just one housing, just a focused housing bond that could help with the gap financing for some of these projects, I think that would be another goal that, again, it's just going to come down to money, a lot of it. And I think that one is more specific that I think we could actually achieve and have kind of the political momentum to achieve right now.
So, and that is just to make sure, when you say bond, you mean a voter approved bond vehicle, right? Great. Okay. And did you get that? So that's a 2 to, and so that would be, if we did that with excellence, that would be a cool big step forward in helping us solve our mission or meet our mission, which is increase the number of units. Okay, super. Thank you. Vicky, and then I'm going to go to Maggie and then come back to you, Liz. Fair? So Vicky, take us.
So I don't know if I can describe this specifically, but some language that came up. So, okay, number one, it would help me, the language accessible keeps coming up, and I suspect that could mean different things to different people. And so as a disability rights advocate, that's usually what I'm thinking of, but we primarily work with individuals who are very low income and have disabilities. And so accessible means a lot of things. And I was just thinking about some units that we were called out to see, which were great inside, but they were so far off a bus route that it just wasn't feasible for people who don't have transportation, can't afford it or have disabilities and can't get to places, if it's out in just more, not a central location. And I mentioned, I don't know if it was the last meeting and the meeting before, about ensuring that any new construction follows our visitability ordinance. Ideally, I mean, that's like the bare minimum. I would love to see a goal focused on looking more at the universal design principles, so that, and if you know about those, it's kind of like, imagine who of ages, races, disabilities, everything, who will use whatever it is that we're creating and design it from day one in a way that is usable. And because I can tell you, like, I mean, as a recipient of city grants, I mean, we are constantly, widening doorways and building ramps and putting in lifts, and because there's so many things that aren't accessible that if they had been constructed in the first place with universal design principles, it would probably save a lot of money in the long run, knowing that, if you don't have a disability now, the chances that you're going to age into one are pretty great.
So that's a powerful point, Vicky. And I just wonder whether into what Jim said, like his suggestion of in a year, let's get recommendations. Every existing lever, tool, incentive in place, could one of those sets of recommendations involve exactly what you just said? Because if they're issuing permits and they're doing stuff like that, maybe is that upstream enough so that you're not doing the back end? Now let's widen the damn door because we didn't build it wide enough in the first place.
Right. Well, and that's
considerations around access to transportation. Like, could that be a part of what Jim observed, or is it a separate goal? That's my question for you.
No, I think it could be. And I'm wondering about like an educational component that I think could be readily achievable or easily, in a year or 2 years, and that making sure that those inspecting know about the visitability ordinance or universal design, and just training and education about the universal design principles with builders. I feel like that could be something that would be fairly easy to do.
And again, could that be part of the so that would be part of what you say to the city is, look, you've got a bunch of ability ideas that we would like you to incorporate. Would that capture it?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Super. Thank you. Maggie, coming to you.
All right, thanks. Thank you, everyone. So, I'm sitting here and I'm listening to all these wonderful ideas. And one of the things that, I think maybe the purpose or the reason on the committee, on this commission, is to make sure that people remember that we have some really valuable tools in our community, such as the Pima County Community Land Trust. And I think oftentimes we forget that we have the, and so I would like to suggest that we really start thinking about using the community land trust like many other communities are using to create permanent affordability. We don't have to be a developer, but if we're going to be investing tons of public funds into creating affordable housing, whatever it looks like, it's from a policy standpoint, I think it makes a lot of sense that these funds be reused and recycled down the road. So I think just making sure that we're also keeping in mind the tools that we have, such as the Pima County Community Land Trust, and see how we can make sure that we are also advocating for permanent affordability.
So I had a little trouble hearing. I missed some of what you said. It was just, I'm not sure if it was my internet or yours. So did someone hear that, to paraphrase?
I can say it again. Can you guys not hear me? Am I going in and out? Maybe I'll get closer.
A little bit. There was just the.
All right.
Just like that we. Like Verizon commercial. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
So our community has a lot of tools, such as the Pima County Community Land Trust. We are a community land trust, and just making sure that we remember as a community that we have this valuable tool to promote permanent affordability. And from a policy standpoint, it makes a lot of sense because we reuse and recycle subsidies to not only benefit the current homeowner, but when they sell them, there are resale restrictions. I can explain these programs with this program, but basically it promotes permanent affordability. And it's something that I just want to remind everybody that we're here, and also that, and to kind of look at community land trust and like type programs as a venue, as a way to create and promote permanent affordability.
Got it. So is it, so it sounds like a super valuable tool. Correct. To be able to use to not just achieve access to housing, but create sustainability and security in housing, right?
Correct.
So is it a how, or is there something that we could deliver with excellence in the next 12 months or the next 2 to 5 years?
Well, I think that we are thinking like these thousand homes that we want to create in the next 5 years, put a few of those in a community land trust to promote permanent affordability.
Right. And here's what I would observe is you're thinking exactly. So if, for example, let me just take the suggestion of Jim's suggestion of 1,000 new units, right? That's our 5 years. That's what we're going to deliver. As you backward map to how you're going to do that, every tool is going to be needed to be on the table. Because if we could generate 1,000 units every 5 years, we would not have a problem in our respective communities. Like, that's the bottom line, right? And so, well, or we wouldn't have one for at least 50 years, or in 50 years, we wouldn't have the problem. But that would be an incredibly important tool as you crafted here's how we're going to do it, right? Right. I think, Jim, as I recall, you also mentioned that we sort of get our clocked cleaned a little bit as a community in the competitive process to get the 9% tax credit program, right? Like our Tucson's gotten It's more.
For 2020, there were 2 projects awarded for the city of Tucson. Based on the self-scores from this last round for 2021, it appears that Tucson's only going to get 1 award this year for about 70 apartments.
Wow.
So, I don't think we're going to necessarily get our fair share in 2021, but there are things that we can do to change that.
Yeah. So so as a short-term goal, are there things, like, is that a goal? Do we want to change whatever needs to be changed to go be more competitive? Or is that a how that we will build into achieving 1,000 units in the next 3 to 5 years? I mean, is there something that we need to do to be more competitive?
Yeah, and I think that's part of what the goal that I brought up, the 1-year goal, is to develop a list of recommendations. And that would be those would be some components for that.
Got it. The other thing, okay, so Maggie, was there anything else? Thank you. Your hand is still up, so.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. Right. And Liz, I'm coming to you, and then Jay, I'll visit you next. Hi, Liz. Got an idea.
Oh, you can go to Jay.
Oh, go Jay. Hi, Jay.
Hi, I have I'm thinking of a short-term goal and a longer-term goal.
Perfect.
The short-term goal may go along with what you were just describing as that Jim was talking about. I guess my idea is for the commission to learn and understand what is preventing housing from being built in the community, both at all levels, whether we're talking about, middle income, low income, whatever the case may be. I think it's important to understand the barriers that we have in this community to building housing of all types in order to then be able to think about some solutions to address those problems. So I'd love to see some experts address the commission. I'd love to see everyday folks who are dealing with housing at all different levels. What are they seeing? Again, just understanding the nature of the housing market and particularly the problems for having housing built. So that's one. I think that's short term. And then the longer term goal that I would have, one of the goals that I would have for this commission is to address housing segregation in this community. If we're looking at housing policy and we're looking particularly at equity, we would be remiss, I think, if we didn't look at the fact that we still live in a very segregated community by race and ethnicity, and that our housing policies and essentially the housing patterns we see today are stem from explicitly racist policies of the past. So I think we really need to look at that. I think it also goes into kind of what Vicky mentioned as well. People need to have access to opportunity. So if you need low income housing or any kind of housing and you can't access public transportation or you can't access food or whatever the education, whatever the case may be, you're really doing folks a disservice. So really looking at segregated housing patterns, access to opportunity, and how that affects what we're talking about. Because I guess the last thing I'll say in regards to that is that, if you talk to folks in the foothills or Oro Valley, I mean, I know that's not Tucson, but we're, a metro area where the housing market is interrelated. If you talk to folks in those areas that can afford housing, they probably wouldn't tell you that there are any problems with housing, versus if you talk to folks in other parts of the community that are maybe lower income or segregated, you would hear a very different story. So I think it's critical that we look at that if we're really going to look at equity.
That's great. Okay, so and I want to make sure that because that's those are super. So short term, and Jay's suggestion was, what are the barriers? Let's get super curious and do some exploration. Learn and understand what is preventing housing from being built in the community. What are the barriers? Great.
Maybe,
if
I could, maybe continued education of committee members would be a way of.
That would be one of the ways. That's a how, right? So if the group said, yeah, we want to do this with excellence, we're going to be super smart in the next 12 months, then that would be one of the ways. There may be other ways. Do you see it as a separate goal to have committee education?
Well, I think understanding what's preventing housing from being built is, what goes hand in hand with that is understanding, the programs that are current, what we've been talking about, the current programs that are currently available for facilitating the generation of new housing. So all of that's part of the education process of the committee and all of us getting up our learning curve.
I also sort of hear a little, Jay, I don't want to put words in your mouth, so tell me if these are words that were anywhere near your mouth. I almost heard you say, I want to do a bit deeper dive into root cause stuff, root cause challenges, in terms of what gets in people's way.
Yeah, and I think it goes along with what Jim is saying, but I do think it's a different piece, because I think, you can look at the tools that we have that we're not using, but that's different from, looking at the barriers and then looking at other solutions that maybe aren't in the community at this point that other communities are using to address their housing issues. So again, if you don't understand what the barriers are, it's hard to think of creative solutions, I think. So
really hard to solve a problem that you don't explicitly articulate. It's just tough. Good point. Yeah. And then the next, see if this captures it, address housing segregation. Oh, sorry, there, row 7. Address housing segregation, access to opportunities in Tucson. Housing patterns showing the legacy of, but to tie this to, Vicki also mentioned through, it's the sort of master plan. That's not the best way to say it, but that's sort of what I'm hearing is, let's think holistically about the community as a whole at some point, right? Segregation, access to transportation, where do people live, how do they flow? Is that what you mean, or do you mean segregation? As a
what's the difference with what you just said? What are you asking me to clarify?
Whether you meant explicitly and specifically segregation, or as Vicki also, as she referenced, like transportation. Is it more of a master plan, like in the next 5 years, we want to create or make recommendations to the mayor and council to create a master plan?
No, I think it's addressing segregation by race, ethnicity, disability, and lack of access to opportunity in places that are still very segregated in our community.
That's it. That's much more explicit. So that's great. Okay.
Jay, I have a question on this one. So how do we know if we're successful? How do we define success on this goal?
You have integrated neighborhoods of opportunity.
But is there a tangible, goal?
You could look.
Absolutely. Yeah. You would need to come up with them, but look at any opportunity-rich neighborhood. I think it's like, it when you see it. You can look at statistics that tell you live in a neighborhood of opportunity based on housing values, educational attainment, access to healthcare, access to food. So if you look at the statistics of different neighborhoods, those things are very different. So yeah, I think it is actually, we've created maps at the Southwest Fair Housing Council that show those different data points and how they show up. So, it's complicated for sure, but yes, I think you can. One could.
Jim,
I think a good measure for that is that people are not displaced.
For the topic that the goal that we're discussing, Liz? I think, Jim, to your point, it can be made smart, right? So like your 1,000 units was very explicit and very smart because it's so specific, measurable. And in Jim's, if all of you decided that was one of the things in the next 3 to 5 years you were going to go after and deliver with excellence, then the next step is to make it smarter, right? Is to get more specific about its attributes. But I think it's doable. Okay, great.
Can I get to what I wanted to bring up?
Of course.
So I just wanted to add one thing, which is that I'd like for the commission to address this, to review the city's budget and look at like the community's input regarding the city's budget before next year, before mayor and council approve it. and give our input as well.
Okay.
For opportunities regarding allocation and reallocation of resources for housing.
Super. So that'd be a 12 months. That would be a this year goal. Great. And if we did that with excellence, it would move the ball. Super. Thank you. Additional, more than that, Liz? That's great. We got that one. Anything else? Sheree, I see your hand up.
Yeah, just one other goal I think that I have is kind of also looking at, and it goes along with kind of trying to get, especially the single family rental housing market. It's been kind of co-opted by large scale corporations, you know, all this stuff. So along with that, I guess looking at how we strengthen our base of small scale developers, and how we, again, we have the IID, we have, you know, the infill incentive district, we have the GPLET, we have these large economic tools that are meant for large scale development, but we have very few for smaller scale development. And with that, I think, and part of the reason I'm also on the, just joined the Industrial Development Authority is because I think we have a huge gap in financing with loans. And there's the gap exists between like the $300,000 range to the $1 million range. And there's this weird gap where it's actually really tough to get a loan in that range. And that is for like and that's why we don't see, again, what we call missing middle housing, but it's the triplex, you know, everything from like a kind of like a triplex and up, you know, between a triplex and then smaller though than an apartment building. We're missing these housing typologies that I think could be well suited for local small scale developers. And we're missing the financing for them. We're missing, I think it's, you know, putting the same constraints that you put on a large scale, you know, 40 to 80 unit development, trying to put those same constraints on a small triplex is ridiculous. And we have I hear a ton of complaints all the time from people about, you know, why is a fourplex considered commercial development when the banks don't see it that way? It's fiveplex and up is as a commercial development. So I see a lot of incongruencies between, you know, financing, the zoning, the regulations, and it's just a mess. And again, that's why we don't see those types of units developed anymore.
So the crux of your suggestion as a goal, though, is that we literally expand the number of capable mid-sized developers, because that will then manifest as mid-size inventory that will move the needle on the number of units. So is that a short-term or longer-term goal? Is that?
I think it's longer term because I think it's an interconnected set of issues, but it encompasses some of these other ones that have already been mentioned.
Yeah, so the idea then would be that one thing that this commission could do with excellence is to go out there and actually recruit, promote, engage mid-sized developers, figure out what they need, and go figure out how to help them get what they need to accelerate their success so that the community benefits with those kinds of, the topology, as you say, topology, to diversify the topology units. Is that it? Yeah, if you did that with excellence, that would move the ball. Great.
Yes,
Did you get that in? That was expand number. Yeah.
I think so. And anyone who has committed goals, if you don't like this wording, don't hesitate to let me know. And then just so folks know, if the goal wasn't there, what I heard was that that's more the how. And so I captured those thoughts down here. But if there are any thoughts down here that you feel like should be reflected back in a goal, please let us know.
Yeah, sorry, I like what Liz added in the chat. I think adding local developers to small to mid-scale developers is important, that distinction.
Good. Okay, and I want you to be less or focused on the precision of the words than the intent of the idea, right? We can get to
I think local is an intent. So.
Oh, this is great. So we've got it. But just because if we go wordsmithing, we will never get back to the altitude of the ideas. And what we want to do is divine the ideas. And so local is in there. Okay, awesome. That was super. Shreya, anything else, Shreya, from you? Otherwise, I'm coming to Jim. You've been waiting patiently. And then Lori, I'm coming to you next.
Mine is actually more of a question to the rest of the group than anything. Which, you know, I heard what we all said when we were talking about adjusting the mission statement to have an increased focus on homelessness.
I was
But
gonna bring that up.
it-
Yeah.
yeah, so is there a SMART goal, something that's definable and achievable that we can work towards to address homelessness in Tucson?
Exactly.
I have several.
Good, good. So who said that? Liz, did you say, who said that? Who said I have several?
Both Liz's have them. Liz Morales can go.
So
I would,
think,
oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, go take it. One Liz, we'll take the Liz's in alpha order by last name. Boom. Got that.
The only thing I would say is there's currently some benchmarks that are done on a national level to show how communities get to functional zero. And so we're not part of that effort right now, but we could look at how could we join one of those efforts. It's called Built for Zero. But our TPCH, our COC really should be the kind of the driver of that and have the commission be part of that conversation and develop that. But I think there's opportunities if we really want to, which I do, try to set some real goals for us to get to functional zero, which is the same as the essence of ending homelessness. So I would just put that out there of looking at how we can work with TPCH and getting into one of those benchmark type programs where we can make see the success and reach our goals.
And is that in a 1 year or that's longer term or 1 year?
Well, so some of them are 1 year, depends on our community and what our numbers are. So it could be a 1 year goal that might get extended based on, where we find ourselves progress. But I'm not as well versed on how they do that, but it's definitely something that we could buy into as a community and try to work towards that.
Liz, can you summarize what that goal is, please?
Yeah, it support or maybe coordinate with TPCH in joining Built for Zero to get to functional zero.
And is that for the city or for this commission?
It would be a city effort.
Exactly. So how?
But I see it being a collaboration between the city and the commission being kind of a leader, and then on the continuum of care.
So could the commission drive it? Because right now what the commission is trying to answer is, what are the things that if we did with excellence would really make a difference, right?
I think the commission can drive it, but it has to be. I do think it's a partnership. But I think
I can drive in partnership, but someone's got the steering wheel, right?
Right.
So for this commission, that's a suggestion. It's for a 1 year. That's a short term. Everyone understand that? Coordinate with TPCH, enjoying the built for zero to get to functional zero. So that's just the act of joining. Is that it?
Right.
So that's a pretty low bar goal. The act of joining. Is there more to that?
There's a lot more to it.
Okay.
There's things that you have to report back to HUD on how you, and it's not, I'm speaking really poorly on it because I used to be a part of it and when I was in Phoenix, but I don't know if it's Jason's on here, but we can get more language around that.
So
that's more accurate.
So for the commission, if you are interested in this one, again, the next thing we're going to do is to rank order and prioritize these goals. If this emerges as one of the things that you want to go after with vigor to deliver excellence, then you will backward map from there and do what it takes to be excellent, right? Liz Morales or?
No, and I would just say that if for some reason we can't join the larger group, that's a national kind of effort, we can still utilize those benchmarks for ourselves and measure ourselves against how we're doing. So I would just add that.
Poonam, can I ask one quick clarifying question to help us moving forward? And sorry, I can't raise my hand while I'm sharing my screen. And when we do the voting, do you want to do the voting all the goals at once, or do you want to do short term and long term?
Yeah, I think I was going to ask you about that. So somehow we need 2 columns, right?
Yes, Rachel, please.
Yeah.
So working on the survey in the background. Rachel, please make sure it's by short and long. Thanks.
Yep. Gracias. Thank you. Liz Morales, were you done before I hand it over to?
Yes.
Thank you. Take it, Liz.
All right. So I'd like to see, first off, some sort of progress with emergency shelter outside of the gender binary for people living in homelessness. People living in, I don't need to go into it. I'm just gonna say that.
So is that a short term?
I think it's probably gonna be within a year or longer goal, 5-year goal maybe, to be
Well, so
realistic.
it probably could be both if that's how you want to declare it, right? So you could say,
Yeah.
here's what we're going to go really hard after over the next 12 months is the emergency shelter for homeless folks that is gender blind.
Yeah. And then a source of income protections for renters. I think that's something that would protect everyone. I think that probably is a 3 to 6 month goal.
So tell me that. What that means?
Does everyone know what that means?
I don't.
So source of income protections are for people, when people go to a landlord, the landlord basically is not permitted to ask what your source of income is. So oftentimes people experience discrimination from landlords. It's like legal discrimination based on what their source of income is. So say it's Social Security, say they have a housing subsidy, or they are on a retirement or pension, something to that effect. Landlords will oftentimes say that I'm not going to rent to you because I don't rent to people who are on a housing subsidy or who are on Social Security, something to that effect, even though on the other hand, they will rent to people who receive the same amount of income. So it's a form of active housing discrimination that is permitted under fair housing law.
So what could the commission do with excellence to change that?
So the commission with excellence could make that as like a formal recommendation as a policy, and they could push that to mayor and council, and it could be that could be like a policy within our community, and it would be a really innovative policy.
So let me ask you a question. Early on, Jim said, hey, one of the recommendations short term would be a set of recommendations to the mayor and council to take every existing ability in place right now to advance our housing mission, right? Could this be one of the things that gets put in there to say, hey, we would recommend that the mayor and council adopt an ordinance or a policy that would do X, Y, and Z? Would that?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, great. Okay, so it's already captured in Jim's suggestion. And if that was the one that you decided to go after and deliver with excellence, as you then backward mapped and sort of got working on it, this is the kind of stuff that would be included in that set of recommendations. Right, Jim? Okay, Liz, that captures it? That addresses it?
Sure.
More ideas?
Sure.
More ideas? Because this is where this goes around, Jim was right, that rich conversation around the homeless earlier. Let's really figure out how to declare a couple of goals and then see if the consensus is.
So what are you looking for?
What can we do relative to homelessness?
Well,
either 12 months or the next, 3 to 5 years that become smart. So specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time certain.
I think we can look at the way.
Maybe a goal would be to see a downward trend of the percentage of our population as homeless over 3 years or 5 years or something. So I don't know the exact numbers.
You could say that. You could say the goal is that in 3 to 5 years, here's what we're going to pursue doggedly and deliver with excellence. We're going to we want to see at least a 10% decrease in the number of homeless Tucsonans. We will be accountable for that. We're going to come up with a bunch of different ways to do that. We don't yet know how, but that's the thing that we're going to go after. And that's going to be our keel.
How are we going to do that? Just manifest it with good vibes?
No, you got to listen. First, I got to declare.
There's the challenge.
And that's the challenge. Because if it were easy, everybody would do it. But until you declare it with that sort of precision, it becomes really difficult to coherently backward map. And we end up doing a lot of things that aren't at the end of the day as effective as we want them to be. So if you said, you know, we're gonna have a 15% reduction and that's what this commission said, yep, that is what we're gonna deliver in 5 years, then that's an audacious, and then you gotta sit down and say, what are we willing to do to get that done? And you will figure it out.
So going forward with our future meetings, what will be occurring with the future meetings? I'm just curious. Like,
First you gotta
Well,
get the destination,
yeah.
right? First we gotta get
So,
the
Okay, we're just like reestablishing like what the purpose
yeah,
is.
so I think,
Got it.
Liz, once we have our goals and
Okay.
we've agreed upon, these are the things that we want to try to accomplish as a mission, or as goals for the commission, excuse me. You know, that will drive our agenda items going forward. And, you know, we may decide to break out into some subcommittees to address some of the more difficult issues. You know, in terms of coming up with recommendations, the subcommittees would come back before the commission. Commission would approve whatever recommendations are to go to mayor and council. So, you know, but I don't think it's necessarily the commission itself that is gonna generate additional housing units or decrease the rate of homelessness. It's gonna be the council advising mayor and council and the rest of the city on these are things that the city can do to achieve those goals.
But you can
And the result, the
yeah.
proof will be in the pudding, right?
And as a commission, Liz, the opportunity for you is to lead on it. Doesn't mean I have to do it all, but someone's got to own it, declare it, and be accountable for doing what it takes to keep working on it, right? And so that's really did that clarify or further confuse? I think Jim probably clarified, I probably further confused. Okay, let's see. Lori, I think you've been super patient for a long time. Mindy, I'll come to you next, and then Maggie to you after that.
I'd like to suggest that we take a look at the PHA, the Public Housing Authority, and the rules for Section 8 vouchers and vouchers for folks for homelessness, and look at what those rules and sometimes barriers are into getting folks into a housing voucher.
Okay, so that's a short term, right?
Yep.
So we do a rapid sort of evaluation of how those, whatever gets in the way of a human being with a voucher that they need.
Yes.
And Lori, can you restate that real quick?
I think it'd be helpful for the commission to understand how Section 8 and housing vouchers work and what the rules and regulations for those are, and which of those are government imposed and which of those are city imposed, and to talk about eliminating barriers to getting people into those vouchers. Is that helpful, Anne?
You're good at typing in. It's so hard when everyone's watching. And actually, sort of what I heard was beyond understanding and reviewing, it was actually to maximize, right? To figure out what to do. So as a declaration in the short term, if this commission said, we're going to do whatever we need to do to maximize the utility of those vouchers within whatever control we have by making recommendations for the part that the city can control. You can't change what the feds will do.
Hey, Poonam, in the interest of time, I think, how long do you think it'll take to do the vote on these?
I think we're probably, I was just looking, do we have any major ideas that people are like super excited to have it come up here at all?
Mindy does.
Yes, go. Mindy's got both hands going, so that's a good one. Go, Mindy.
My brain is spinning around, how do we get funding and how do we find property?
You're going to find that's all the how. So here's how water behaves. And first, water says, I'm going to that address. And then whatever the boulder is, whatever the valley is, whatever the stick is in the way, water just keeps flowing.
Good.
So
So I'm wanting to identify city land that's available
Okay.
and
For
unused
development.
for development of housing,
And that's short term?
short term.
Yeah.
I would like to,
And what would you do with that? Is that to promote to developers?
no, that would be looking, the next piece would be looking at financing, federal, state grants, taking a look at some of the taxes that we might be able to divert into affordable housing, say from taxes from marijuana sales. That would be looking at going to the state level to bring in more income for us to build new programs.
So Mindy, would these be part of the how, going back to Jim's original long-term goal of let's deliver 1,000 units?
Okay. Long-term goal would be, for me personally, supported housing.
So
for housing first programs to be developed to address our homelessness.
So the wraparound services.
Correct.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Housing first.
So how do we, is that a short term? That's a long term, right? Is that a short term or long term?
That's, that is like, should have been happening.
All of this, like that's, yeah. I know.
Our homelessness issue to me is a bigger, broader issue, but that will be for other conversations. So for me, a short-term goal would be looking at properties, and the other one would be, a short-term goal would be looking at financing, how to get money to build this dream.
No, related to that, Jim, you mentioned the whole American Rescue Plan. And I know that in our state, we got our numbers. So we now know exactly how much is coming to the state. I suspect Arizona does too. Each of our municipal governments now know how much is coming to them. What yet isn't explicit is exactly the contours of allowable expenses. But do you still think that's something, we talked.
Yeah. I mean, I could just I'm actually meeting with the governor's office next Wednesday, and the Arizona Department of Housing. The state of Arizona received $4.8 billion as part of the last COVID relief bill in December. And for the most part, that money has not been earmarked. And so we've had unprecedented increases in costs for development of new projects. We're seeing about a 20% increase actually over the last 6 to 9 months. And every single project that is in the development phase right now is in trouble. And so I'm going to be advocating to the governor's office to earmark a portion of that, and it'll probably be somewhere between $100 and $200 million for new affordable housing projects.
So is that something that you can do on your own, or is that something that is?
That's something I'm doing that on my own, more in conjunction with the Arizona Housing Coalition.
Okay, so someone's already got that. So this commission, it isn't something that we should think about declaring as a 6 month.
I don't think it's, I'm not sure it's necessary for this group to do, but I thought you guys might be interested in hearing about it.
Great. Maggie, let me go to you, and then we're gonna try to see whether Rachel's got it, and we'll try to get the next thing done. Go. Hey, Maggie.
So I just, I'm looking at our mission number 2, which is protect barrios and communities from rapid change and displacement, as well as structural disinvestment. And, I've been working on this for a long time, and I still don't have a suggestion other than empowering the residents in some way, shape, or form, and also, empowering education. But also, one of the things, so we're talking about gentrification and displacement because of gentrification, and gentrification is not necessarily a bad word. Who doesn't want their home to increase in value, right? But where it becomes a problem, obviously, is when people are displaced and they have nowhere else to go. And we've been having like conversations, community conversations, and what really sticks out is a person in a barrio raising his hand and saying, why can't it be us? Why can't we be those people that are, selling and profiting from the homes that we own? So, I think that it's about empowering, maybe finding, people who are, I don't know the answer to this either. So, but I feel like we need to focus on trying to set a specific goal that pertains to the second mission, and empower residents.
It also, yeah, it is. I hear you completely, Maggie, and it's amorphous in my head too. It also ties to the whole notion of education and wraparound services, right?
Right.
To ensure that a person is going to get the full benefit and the security.
Including, people who just need their houses rehabbed, and those are resources in our, again, identifying these resources, maybe even driving those resources to help what I say, and maybe it's not politically correct, people who are maybe house rich, cash poor, and also there's like the whole education component about, being able to get a mortgage and what have you. So I think that there can be very specific and global.
Yeah, so as a suggestion, is there, and I'm brainstorming with you, is there an opportunity in the short term to say we as a commission are going to create a new programmatic idea, and in the next 6 months we will have fleshed that thing out as a recommendation, and it is going to focus on education, empowerment of residents and those that are Tucsonans, right? That are,
and funding, money. I mean, many of these homeowners need
right
done with their home, and it could be, or products, I should say.
I would say, Maggie, this also goes along with kind of what I was talking about with housing segregation, because you don't have, in my opinion, you don't have gentrification and displacement without segregation and people who do and don't have access to mortgages or the housing market. And so I think that they go together in some way. I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. I don't know what you think about that, but.
I agree, but I also think it's also partly kind of it's not even sometimes just the education or the access, but it's that cycle of poverty, because the reality is that, gentrification is affecting people who don't have funds, so their house is falling apart and they have no other out than to sell it to, again, an investor, a developer, or someone who's going to take advantage and basically stripping that equity and that wealth from that community and also from that family. So
and if we could just alter the goal isn't to create a goal, the goal is to create a program, because there isn't anything like that, right?
Right.
Wholesale. And so this commission could say, we're going to deliver a recommendation for a program that's going to be kick-ass good and super important, and it is going to move the ball. We're going to deliver it with excellence, right? Okay, thank you, Maggie. That was a really important point.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that most of the people I know who are in actively gentrifying neighborhoods, who are among the lowest income and are being displaced, have really bad taste in their mouth when it comes to city provided education programs for those residents.
It may be.
They're really unlikely to participate.
At this point, Liz, at this point, Liz, it's not about whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. It's just an idea. So we've got them all up. Yeah. And now the next thing, we've got 7 minutes, but we're going to give it our best shot. So let me check with Rachel and Ann. Yep. So I just want the group to quickly, can you review all of the suggestions that we have for goals? Let's just go through and just make sure that we all remember what they meant, because the next activities, we're going to show them back to you and you're going to then rank order them, right? So first, this is a long-term, that we will deliver 1,000 new affordable housing units within the city of Tucson, the long-term. Provide a set of recommendations to manage on activities, levers, tools, existing incentives that the city can utilize with potential modification to increase momentum around affordable housing. So this is the Jim's suggestion from the beginning, pass a voter approved housing bond. Like we could go after that, deliver that with excellence. That would make a difference. Learn and understand what's preventing, get deeper in our familiarity around the barriers. What else do we have? Where are we?
We're at 5 here.
Number 5, right. Address housing segregation. But yeah, so that was the point that Jay made, right? So we all understand. I just want to just check your understanding. So scroll through, you don't need me to read them because we're going to run out of time, but scroll through slowly. If there's anything that isn't clear, or I just want to make sure that you know what it is that we're all voting on soon here. So just make sure that it makes sense. You remember the conversation.
I just want to throw out here that it's a little bit difficult to look through them with Anne sharing her screen because we can only see a couple of them. So that's a little bit challenging for me, at least.
And can you email this really quickly to the commission?
Or could we just maybe vote at a later date? Because it feels like, I agree that I can't really see them well, and it doesn't feel like this is something we should rush. We ran out of time, and that's on us. And I would hate to like shortchange giving these thought and voting on them.
And I second.
Are you to join us next month to go through the vote? Is that
time? Or what's the dates? Let me just make
right
sure.
now? We will confirm that in a minute. But right now, our next meeting is scheduled for June 15th at 4 p.m. again.
Can we? Yes, I can be there. What does Rachel's format look like? Have you seen it? Or Rachel, can you just show it to us if you are ready?
Hi, yeah, I had it in the form of a Zoom poll, and I have that ready if we wanted all of the priorities. I'm sorry, what?
Here's what I'd like to suggest is, let's see what the format that Rachel's got it in. It may not be as clunky as we think because it's a different format. And even if we just go through it once, and then you can review it next time.
Can we consider maybe just having like a 30-minute meeting to just go through this and approve it?
Take a look. Just take a look at the format and see if it's daunting or whether it's doable. I think it's doable. Rachel, can you show us what the first one's going to look like?
Sure. Here, I will launch the first poll, and it should show up on everybody's screen.
So this is long-term, right? This is the summary of your goals. The question here is, these are all the long-term goals that you articulated. Which of these is for you the most important? That's the question. Pick one, hit submit. Which for you is the most important?
I am so not comfortable with.
I'm not comfortable with this either.
Okay.
Yeah. This.
Okay, so time out, everybody.
Fair enough. Yeah, time out.
I agree, this is a lot we're throwing at you, and I agree that we don't want to rush to any decisions here. I'd rather I've had the luxury of having a week to think about this, and I recognize that Mike and I are the only ones who are in that position. So I guess what I'd like to propose is that we pick this up at our next commission meeting, and it'll give, if we can email out the current language for the proposed mission and the current list of goals. And I'm going to give each of you a homework assignment to, if you want to make changes, please submit them in writing to Anne prior to our next, I guess, in the next 2 weeks. And then we will compile those for our next meeting, and we can really try to focus down that list to where we want to focus as a group. Does that make sense, everybody?
I have a counter offer that there's what is it called? A monkey survey. There's
Survey Monkey. Yeah.
Survey Monkey that we put all of the, I loved that shot of what I just saw on the screen in the format with the dots in it. that we get, that be sent out, that we can work on before our next meeting?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to do that, but I think what I heard is, this is coming at some of you quickly and you'd like to spend some more time digesting it and potentially provide additional goals. And so I want to give each of you the opportunity to do that. And we will send out the list prior to the next meeting, and we can either do it on the fly or we can do it beforehand. That really doesn't matter to me. I think it'll be better if we have some maybe conversation before we put it to vote.
Great. Can I finish this out?
Yep.
It is 6 o'clock exactly. So that was a lot, right? So just want to acknowledge it, say it, take a deep breath. That was a lot. And here's the bottom line. There is no community in this nation has figured this out. I don't know why it is, out of 500,000 people in the city of Tucson, that there are 18 of you in this journey, in this moment together. And I'm going to observe you are in this moment, in this journey together. And we can do this. You can do this, says your fangirl, or you're not yet a stalker, but a #1 fan. I've got so much hope in what is possible in the city of Tucson because of what I've experienced in the city and the citizens and the audaciousness to trust each other and try to do stuff. The hard work as leaders is to find the simplicity. That's the hard work. And what happens is when we go to simplicity in something as complicated as affordable housing in our communities, it's easy to repel the simplicity and embrace the complexity, which is what keeps us stuck, right? And so I just want to challenge you as you look at these things. Nothing is permanent, but as leaders, we can declare a keel that goes deep in the water, get really focused on delivering a few things with excellence. And when you do that, you can literally transform what's happening. And so I am so proud of you for having the guts and the courage and the willingness, like, to go. Because there is no community in the country that's got this figured out. And for every week that passes where we don't get it figured out, there are more people who are leaking hope all around us, right? And so we got this thing. You guys have this thing. So I love the conversation, and thank you for tolerating I wish I had like Benadryl, right? That you could put on for some of the itch. It's just the nature of the stuff. And so I'm so honored, frankly, that you all just keep choosing to show up and keep going. And that is the best hope that you're going to get this thing figured out differently than other communities have.
Well, I really appreciate you being here with us today and next month. I think you've added a lot to the conversation, and you are helping us focus on how we can come up with some achievable goals. And all of us are coming from different backgrounds, different perspectives, different world views, which I think gives us strength. But I want to make sure that when we get through this, we don't have some of the downfalls of the previous housing commission. So
at some point you're going to do a pinky promise and say, this is our mission, these are our goals, and we're going to choose to trust and stay in it, and we're just going to keep going. Yeah, good for you. Thanks for letting me hang out.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and conclude agenda item number 5 and move to agenda item number 6, which is next steps. The second Tuesday in June is a mayor and council meeting. And so I'm going to propose that our next meeting be on June 15th. Actually, that's not a good day for me. Hang on. I'm taking my family to Hawaii.
Nice.
That'd be a fine place to hold the meeting.
Hawaii in about ever that week. But if I need to, I will make it work. So
could we consider the 22nd?
Is the 22nd a mayor council meeting?
Oh, or the 8th?
So what about, is June 1st too soon?
No, June 1st is perfect.
That's good.
How does everybody feel about that day?
People that have no affordable housing appreciate that. It's good.
What time, Jim?
4 o'clock, same time.
Okay,
Let me check.
I'll be there.
Okay. So I have to say, I am amazed at the attendance of today's meeting. I think that's great for the group. So kudos to everybody. Before we adjourn, one thing I'd like to ask is, does anyone have any agenda items that we'd like to get on our next meeting?
Jim, I think we need to share a couple of things that the mayor and council has directed for this group to work on.
Okay.
That's a little, I would not count that as part of the goals, but part of the assignment for mayor and council. So I would like to make sure that the council, the commission knows what the commission has been tasked with by mayor and council.
So the commission has its own honeydew list, apparently.
That's right.
Okay, is that that's an agenda item for next month? Okay, Mindy, did you have something?
Yeah, I would like to put on the agenda that we have our vote.
Yep. Okay, yeah, that's, I think.
And I did have a question. Does anybody know where the mayor and council are at with the ADUs?
I can provide an update on that. This is Corinne. And actually, I'd like to make sure everybody's aware of some public meetings that we're holding in about a week on accessory dwelling units. I will send out a notice to everyone in this group. I'll put the link in the chat, but I can also send out an email to everyone that you can forward to your networks, your organizations, about another series of public meetings that we're holding. So we held some public meetings in February to kind of introduce the concept, provide some background, and get input from the public. And so based on that input from the public and from our stakeholder group, we've developed a draft proposal that we'll be sharing at a series of public meetings that we're holding over the next week. It starts, the first one's next Wednesday, and then it's for a few days, at various times of day and days of the week, so people can attend when it's convenient. We'll be sharing that proposal and getting feedback. After that, and after we're kind of able to integrate that feedback, we will take a proposal for a zoning code change to allow accessory dwelling units to the Planning Commission. So it will go to Planning Commission over the summer, probably June, July. There will be a public hearing with Planning Commission, so that's another opportunity for public comment and input. And then it will go to Mayor and Council. And they also will hold a public hearing. So that's another opportunity for comment. I think it will probably get to Mayor and Council maybe September, but that will be determined kind of by how the next set of meetings and Planning Commission goes. Thank you for asking, Mindy. And I hope that many of you can attend those public meetings over the next couple of weeks.
Thanks, Corin. Any other agenda items you guys would like to see on our next meeting? Okay.
I don't know if this is. Oh, I don't know if this is if this pertains to the goals that we agreed on. But I know that there has been some conflict with some community organizations and like park enforcement with the feeding policy recently, and so I'm wondering if we can get like some information about like from Park Services or the Homeless Outreach Commission, like TPD Homeless Outreach, about the feeding policy is what the ordinance is called. And I think that there are planned changes to that. So just about like what's permissible when it comes to feeding people who are on the street.
We can share. I'll find out where, and it could be that it's if it goes before council in a study session or something, we'll let you know so you can have input there.
Okay.
Okay, well, it's 6:09 p.m. and I appreciate everybody being here today. We are going to adjourn. Thank you.
Get vaccinated, stay hopeful.
Thank you, Janelle.
I'll see you next month. I am like a monthly low-grade infection in your lives. You're welcome.
Be careful, yeah.
It's a welcome one. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Everybody. Thank you, Jim. Thanks, Mike.